Madison, I'm here.
Joelle,
I'm here.
hold on. I'm trying to find your face. Bear with me.
Hit
It's
the
a
app
lot going
view,
on.
hit the speaker view option in the upper right
I
hand corner.
got you.
Yeah, it'll open. Yeah, and then you get to see everything. If you open up the panels, it allows you to see
Uh-huh.
everyone's. Um, I know because I've been on Zoom conferences
For a while. Thank you. I
every
know.
single
What?
day.
Wait, how, first and foremost, how are you?
Uh, I'm hmm, I'm blessed. I'm blessed.
Bless.
Like family's healthy. Fortunately, shout out to Aquarius. I'm sorry that he lost his cousin
I
in all this.
know.
I think um like unfortunately, not knock on wood. The fam is healthy. I'm healthy. The little one
Right.
is healthy. So how about you? How are you feeling?
I'm amazing. I'm so proud of you. I
Ah,
am
thank you.
I am so proud of you. Okay,
Thank
so
you.
one, this was not a planned family reunion. I didn't know that everybody knew everybody that knew everybody. I was
Family.
just moving in spirit, and I'm like, okay, and now it's just confirmation for me. But a quick background, we came up, I want to say, in the 2012, 2013 Twitter era,
Sure.
where it was like a huge boom in New York for a lot of creative innovators on Twitter, more so than Instagram. And
Sure.
so throughout the years, we've just kind of become this digital family. Um, and I've been witnessing his remarkable. You just had a new kid, a new baby, right?
Yes, yes, I did. Yes, ma'am.
Congratulations. So I've been watching his story, and the message that he's spreading, it's filled with love, it's filled with vulnerability, but the most important thing is it's filled with healing. He's graced the stage from TEDx, but he graced our hearts with poetry way before then. I got to do it. I got to give you a formal introduction. I just honor your time, and I'm just like everybody in this chat, I'm super proud of you. So can you tell the people a little bit about yourself and what you do? Because a creative artist always gives the best explanation of themselves.
I mean, I'm really bad at that. I've been working on some folks know me as Joel Yon, jo-
Mm-hmm.
Joel Daniels. I generally open up by saying I tell stories to Black people. That's
Right.
the primary function of how I can service the community through my art, through speaking, through community engagement, through social activism, using my art in a way that speaks to my community, specifically Black folks, but also Black and Brown folks and all of humanity.
Right.
Born and raised in the Bronx. A little bit of my background, and I'm a father. That's actually that plays a just as large a role, I think, in my creative process and identity now, more so than anything else. But here in New York, currently in Bed-Stuy, um, I worked in social services for about 9 years, HIV/AIDS case management. From there, moved on to working with the forensic population. So individuals who had been released from Rikers Island and state facilities who also suffered from DSM-4 diagnoses. That was like my first real introduction to like mental health,
Mm.
mental health stigmas as well. And then right around the same time with the Ferguson uprising happened, I kind of diverted from, I wouldn't say diverted because I believe in seasonal activity when it comes to creativity. And I know you relate to that. Um,
Right.
but prior to the Ferguson uprising, a lot of my primary focus was on MCing. Like Aquarius mentioned, like I'm an MC, I'm a poet. So and yeah, I have a band, all that other stuff. And so right around the Ferguson uprising, I started writing essays. I was going through my own form of mental health struggles, a lot of suicidal
Right.
ideations. I was just finding out I was going to be a father for the first time. And at that point, I was ready. My then partner at the time, she was in her third trimester, and so not really being sure if I could show up as a father, as what we in society identify as a man, and was struggling with that a lot. And that Ferguson provided me, I think, the opportunity to examine not just my own mental health, but the mental health and well-being of the Black community at whole. And so what
Mm.
I do is like I realized like 16 bars in a verse and an 8-bar hook weren't necessarily going to do what I needed in order to convey the message. Um,
Mm.
but essays did. And for me, that was a turning point because I've always been a writer. I identify myself as a,
Ooh,
oh, yeah, you right, Madison?
I'm good. I'm good. I hit the headphones.
Okay, as long as
Okay.
you say, but
I'm
um,
good. I'm good.
I'm an author. but now and like author now, I wasn't an author then, but it what I realized more so than at that time was like the process is seasonal. So at that time I was meant to be an essayist.
Mm-hmm.
I was
Oh,
putting out essays at max volume. I was very prolific at the time, and that helped a lot of my Twitter following, like its growth exponentially in that
yeah.
place. Um, and then, I kind of started making more of a transition later on, especially after my first child, Lila, was born, into speaking. And that's how the opportunity to speak at the TED Women Conference this past.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you again, sis. Where I spoke about co-parenting. The talk is almost at 1 million views, so I'm like really excited about that. That's really cool. I feel like I'm at a place in my life now where and I think it's something Jason had touched on, a good friend of mine. The idea, like we get to a place where I think the opportunity meets our skills of manifestation and our willfulness to like go head on with our purpose. And I feel like that's
Right.
kind of been happening. Ray also too mentioned something. I think it was Ray that was something very important. What we talk about, we've been saying a lot about how 2020 was going to be the year, and then like when you look at Kobe's death, and you look at COVID, you look at all these things that are happening that are kind of questioning our resolve, and also how we're showing up as humans, and
Right.
how we imagined humanity would look like for us in this time period. And it's an opportunity, and so for me, I've been trying to treat this as an opportunity to see where are the gaps, like where are the holes, and where can I best use my skill set to plug those holes. And
Right.
art has allowed me the opportunity to do that. The Bronx has allowed me the opportunity to do that. A lot of what I've ingrained in my art, whether it be theater performance, emceeing, spoken word, poetry, speaking, hosting workshops with young adults and students, what have you, has been how do we properly convey our message and our purpose through art and through creativity, regardless of what that platform might be.
I like that. So what I wanted to touch on for you, our topic today is loving as a Black man.
Yeah.
And I just think this is so important because you have such an interesting a narrative when it comes to like healing, and like you said, like your TED talk was on co-parenting and things of that nature. So I wanted to ask you first, before we got into spirituality, what is loving as a Black man? What does that look like to you?
I think something I had to reconcile a lot is vulnerability and intuition.
Mm-hmm.
You were just talking about like focusing on specific chakras in the body, and I we as men have been taught like intuition is a woman's characteristic when in reality it's a human characteristic, right? It's all training. Like I tell my nephew all the time, like if you walk into a space and you feel uncomfortable, that's your intuition guiding you. And our job as humans is to lean into that. Now, granted, intuition doesn't mean we're always going to be accurate, but what it does mean is if we're honing it allows us the opportunity to be more aware and more mindful when we're showing up in spaces and when we're showing up for ourselves, right? And so,
Right.
vulnerability has taught me that it's okay to be sensitive as a Black man. It's okay to be open. I had a really beautiful conversation with a good friend of mine, Ebony Janice, last night, and she said something really profound to me, which was like, we have to allow ourselves the willingness to let our hearts break open. I think that's where the magic is. When we sit in the spaces of discomfort, and for a lot of Black men, the discomfort comes in being vulnerable and being able to share emotion in a way that doesn't lower your standards of what masculinity looks like, or what it feels like. Because I think that definition, has changed throughout history, and I also think that one, that's okay, and two, that definition changes depending on the man. Like I mean, sometimes masculinity can be seasonal, like and regional as well. Like what's the definition of
Come on now.
like there's so much tension we have with regards to how we deal with masculinity and how we communicate as men, and a lot of that just stems from like lack of love for ourselves and for each other. Because
Right.
once we kind of open the Pandora's box of like why do we need this tension, and why do we need to use the story of trauma in order to divide us in this conversation, then it
Right.
makes it a lot easier to lean into the idea of loving as a Black man. Essentially, just living in your truth, you know? And like, think they're living in their truth, but really they live like we're living in the shadow of what we want our truth to be. And so we imagine, oh, okay, if I convey this, or if I put out this kind of energy, folks will identify me as most masculine or as an alpha male. Like I spent a lot of energy, man, just being like, I wanted to be the loudest dude in the room. I wanted to be the funniest cat in the room. And the more I started leaning into like my truth, which is like, maybe I am the funniest guy in the room in this moment. Maybe I'm not. And having to be okay with who I am in each and every moment and how that shifts and leaving room and space for that. For me, that's showing up in love as a Black man. Realistically, it all boils down to like, what is my truth? And living in that truth in every single moment we're afforded the opportunity to do so, you know?
Woo! Yes, 100% agree, 1000%. I think that hit the definition on the head with the hammer. So now what I want to ask you, now that we know because I like to get the creative identity of the speaker embedded into the words that they're about to portray, so that whoever's listening that resonates with it knows that they're resonating with your story uniquely. So with that being said, I want to ask you what I've been asking everybody else. What is spirituality and what is faith to you? Do you separate the mashed potatoes and the peas, or do you put it all together in a pot of purpose soup and let it marinate?
Well, I mean, first of all, you've been asking some wonderful questions throughout this, and
thank you.
Because like it takes a lot of energy to kind of deal with the other energies, right? And
yeah,
right. Like I get it. I mean, but separately, I definitely don't like mixing anything on my plate. Just like that's just who I am. I also keep my sweet potatoes, my yams. Like I keep that as a dessert. That's how I show up in the world. That's my,
right.
That for me. I actually made a note while some of the brothers were talking, and I felt like this is what was speaking to me. And it's faith is the catalyst, and spirit is the mechanism. And so faith is the thing that pushes us towards spirituality in a sense. I think they can be used interchangeably, but like, with all respect to religions and faiths, right? Like, so Judaism, like when we look at Islam, like those are faiths, and that's like faith-based work. But I think having faith, whether it be in a deity, whether it be in like your parents, whether it be in your creativity, right? Like having faith, I think, helps push you towards your purpose, but also really pushes you towards spirit. And spirit is that allows the things to start clicking. Like if I'm living in spirit, that's also connected to like me living in my truth. Like spirit serves as the connective tissue to that. Like once you start living in your purpose, like your spirit feels more alive. And it's hard sometimes to understand that, because spirit is oxygen at the same time, right? You can't see spirit. Like you can feel it, but it's not a tangible, like I can hold up my phone. Like that's not what spirit is. Spirit is like all these brothers being on this call and exchanging information in a way that allows us to maybe take this back to our own communities. Sidebar tangent is something I've been having conversations about, wanting us to be very clear that community and communion also don't necessarily have to involve an entire body of people. Community could just be myself and Madison having conversation, right? Like that's communion, that's community. I think that's also when we talk about like the body of Christ and what that means. Like this communion is also like our understanding and relativity to ourselves and our higher being, higher calling, and also each other, because we're all higher beings in that regard. But for me, that's really what faith and spirit are, and how they work. Like faith is the catalyst, spirit is the mechanism.
I love that. You need to put that note. I know I've been saying put some stuff on t-shirts, but for real, I'm telling y'all now, you better take it and run with it, because that's some deep shit. That's some deep, real shit. Or put it in a poem or something. Make it useful, because that's some deep shit. So what I want to ask you now, so you keep them separate, and I completely 1000% understand that. So the next thing I want to ask you, you've been through so much, the grind never stops. We've been following each other for a while. We're family at this point.
Yeah, for sure.
And so with your journey, is there an obstacle that comes to mind that you went through and you're faith or your spirituality helped you get through it? Because we're going to talk a little bit about the chakras after this, but I just want to make sure we answer that first.
I mean, that's a good question. I mean, I think there's been multiple. I think I'd be lying if I said there weren't things that I mean, Jason kind of touched on it at one point, and I don't necessarily think I felt this way, but I feel like as Black men, we're trained to potentially think, it really is Black individuals who are potentially going to become parents, we're trained to believe that our children are obstacles, right? Like, granted, I'm speaking from a place of privilege, so let's be very clear, like I'm a man. So even if I'm a Black man, I'm still a man. And that allows that allows me certain passes into certain communities, into certain conversations that potentially a Black woman or a dark-skinned Black woman would not have. But as a parent, we're generally taught like your children are obstacles because then you can't do what you've envisioned for yourself. Like, oh, I won't be able to, my life will be different, which is very true. You know, Ray talked about religion as a discipline, and I do feel like children very much live in the same vein. Like my children have taught me to be more disciplined. Lila, my first daughter, she taught me the idea of discernment, and you know, like I used to say yes to a lot of things because I was skilled at things, and so a lot of it was ego based. Like I get to show off how talented I am in these certain spaces by saying yes to these opportunities, as opposed to anything is not needed here. There are enough voices in this space, or I don't have the time or the spiritual capacity to show up here. So let me say no to that and wait until the thing that feels most aligned with who I am in this present moment comes forward. But that comes with, I think, recognizing that too. Like at times it did feel like my child was a barrier because it's like I can't just pick up and go. I think all barriers are opportunities. You know, my struggles with mental health. I think, you know, whether it be suicidal ideations, whether it be depression, anxiety, the feeling of not wanting to get out of bed, or the pressure of wanting to create but not being able to. You know, I am a writer by trade. I've been writing since I knew how to, like whether it was poems, raps, whatever the case might be. And then not feeling like the thing that I'm greatest at, you know, I wasn't able to produce, and then seeing my self-worth and value in that art, in that work. And like I think that's my biggest struggle, like the hustle and grind and hustle till you die, and you know, you sleep when you're dead mentality, because what that does is it alienates the process for spirit and for rest, right? Like, and I don't want to get too far ahead because I know you're going to answer this. I'm going to probably answer this question, but like rest, you know, like, and being able to sit with the things and the trauma that's potentially keeping us from moving in ways that aligns with where we're trying to be and who we're trying to be. So like for me, the work has been sitting a lot, you know, like, you know, when you're, you know, you watch a track and field event, right? And folks have to run and they have to hurdle over certain things. Like this is not a sprint. And we so far too often treat it like a sprint where we have to jump over things, where it's like, sometimes like you got a broke ankle. Like you can't do the same things that you used to do when your spirit is unhealthy. And like your spirit and body are connected. You have to pay attention to that. So sometimes it's like you're not going 40 miles an hour. Sometimes you have to go 20. You have to slow down and give yourself the opportunity to sit, like take a bird's eye view of the area, and then decide whether or not, how are you going to best jump over this hurdle. Sometimes it's not jumping. Sometimes it's going around. Like
sometimes you got to roll your ass on the ground.
Exactly. You know what I'm saying? Stop, drop. You know, like what works for you in that element, and going from there, I think.
100%. So I want to, there's 7 main chakras in the body, and you've brought up chakras twice now. Yeah. What chakra, because everyone, you know, we have the triggering chakra, and then we have one that we're predominantly focused on, whatever chapter or season we are in on our life. At this moment, what chakra is standing out to you the most?
You know, I'm not going to pretend to be the most well-spoken on all chakras, but I do know, like, my throat chakra is always open.
Right. Blue.
You know, so, and I wouldn't even say always open, because that's a lie. I don't believe in, like, you know, confidence as a narrative, like always, never. Like it's just, that's right. An untruth. But I
get what you're saying.
You know, but for the most part, I try to pay a lot of attention to how I'm speaking. I've been hearing a lot of this about like speaking and manifestation, and we
Oh,
take
that's good.
we take that for granted so often.
Hmm.
That like like even just this, like full disclosure, there's work that I have to do, and I also have the privilege of working from home, right? Where
Oh,
a conventional 9 to 5 where I copyright, but because of what's happening with COVID, like staff has been mandatory, like we have a mandatory work from home decision
right.
made, right? But like there's like stuff that I have to do, and I was like, I'm gonna wait till after this talk because what I didn't
Oh,
want to miss was like the opportunity to hear other brothers share their stories and their perspectives. Because I think once you do that, and it's something that came to my mind while I was listening, like none of us know everything, like
none of us.
right, and so opportunities arise when we get to listen and learn from each other. Again, a conversation I had with my homegirl Ebony Janice when we talk about, she was talking about new knowledge and how we cite each other, like for like when we're looking at for like educational purposes, like the things that we're sharing here is new knowledge. Like we're gaining
Right.
something from this and utilizing that in a way that can shift perspective. Because we tend to lean on old knowledge as a way of moving forward. It's like what we were talking about and doing in 1994 doesn't necessarily work for 2020. And
Right.
part of that is being able to speak truth to that, right? And speak truth and awareness to what's happening now in present day. And a lot of that has to come with like just speaking in general, like speaking
Right.
and listening in that way. But yeah, throat blue chakra for me has been the thing that's like I'm always kind of trying to work on, and like being intentional about what I'm speaking to, and like
Right.
being very meticulous about the words that I choose to describe
Mm.
myself, a situation, the people I love, because that has power for sure.
A lot of power. And guys, the throat chakra, it is for giving and receiving communication. So if you feel like, I hear a lot of people saying like, oh, I feel like something was blocked, or like somebody was like, when you feel like there's blockages of someone giving, maybe if you're manifesting and you feel like there's a blockage, the throat chakra, to open that one, and you can do it either by consuming blue foods, natural foods, or you can meditation music for the throat chakra. That's one of the chakras that I always play. Like when I taught at Columbia University with social media, I
Mm,
made sure that was the undertone to make sure that
yeah.
the communication was right. I like to give people tools. So throat chakra, guys, take
Yeah,
that with
it's
you.
important.
What are 3 positive things you're taking from quarantine?
3. I mean, I think there's a few. I think, and brothers have touched on this. One of my favorite words is intention.
Hmm.
Has been, and I think that I'm being allowed the opportunity to be more intentional about whether it be opportunities, whether it be about how I'm communicating. Like I've been doing a lot of these things already, but for me, it's always about how can I
Right.
elevate the work that's already happening. I think so. So that's one. I think that this is potentially, I don't want to call it our new normal, but I do think the ways that we work as humans, the way brands work, the way communication works is going to be very different after this. Like, what's the fallout look like? And I think this has allowed me the opportunity to kind of be more mindful of all the things
Right.
around me and all the people around me. Whether it be FaceTiming, whether it be voice notes. I love a good voice note. You know what I'm saying? Like, because sometimes it's like I don't have the time to hop on the phone with you, but I can
Right.
leave you a 20-second note of like, hey, I love you, was thinking about you, hope all is well. Um,
Right.
so like mindfulness, I think a mindfulness practice,
Mindfulness.
just being more mindful about how we're showing up, that this is allowing the opportunity for that. And another one of my favorite words, empathy. And it's something
Empathy.
I've been really pushing a lot because it's easy to think because we're in a specific circumstance that's a shared experience for everyone else, and that's not necessarily the case. We
Right.
all have different levels of trauma, biases, projections, like identities that we come into in spaces, whether it be physical space or virtual digital space. And empathy for that, and empathy for those individuals, because we all have our own little bubbles. you know, like that we've kind of cultivated. And I think the work for all of us as human beings, especially as Black and brown creatives, is to create more room for empathy so that we can have more conversations about who we are, what our truths are, and how we each show up for ourselves and for each other, especially in this time where there's a lot of shit out of whack. The one thing that we can't control is how we show up for ourselves and each other, and how much love
Right.
we pour into each other and into ourselves.
Right.
I think, you know, financially, yes, we are hard hit, and there's not a lot some of us can do outside of like applying for jobs or like trying to figure out more ways to be creative. But I know for me, what I can do, like I can control what I can. And what I can do is how much, like, how much love can I put in the space, and making sure the love that I'm putting in and the empathy that I'm bringing to the world is not happening in a vacuum. You know, like,
Right.
well, like what's the way that I can ensure that it's reaching as many people as possible, and that then hopefully gets expounded. And yeah,
I like that. I like that. Oh, that was just how I'm gonna give you one of these too. I'm gonna give you one of these. So I love it when it's like meaty spiritual content. Like it does something to
no.
me. Like, yeah, give me that shit that's gonna go viral. Um, thank you. Oh my goodness. If people wanted to keep up with you and like your speaking engagements and like your thoughts and your ideas and your journey of being a human and being a father and being a partner, if they wanted to keep up with that, where can they follow you?
Well, I mean, it's pretty much the same everywhere. At, you know, the at thing sign, you know, JOELAKAM as in Mary AG. So Joel, aka MAG. That's on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Yeah, you know, like the TED Talk is available there. Some of the other
Mhm.
conversations I've been able to like be a part of. The music, the books are available for purchase. Yeah, you know, I think part of the work, and thank you, Madison. Thank you for creating this platform and the work that you've been doing. Like, I know this is not new to you. You know what I'm saying? Like, what you've been doing,
Thank you.
like creating community is important. But you know, just it's been a blessing to like share space with a lot of these brothers. Real quick, and it's something that came to mind, and I forgot to share this,
Go
but
ahead.
I just want us to make. I also want to redefine prosperity for ourselves as a community as well. I think it's very easy for us to look at prosperity from the lens of like financial gain, but what makes a prosperous human, you know, and I think some of that is like how much love can you proffer, you know, like what's your role in the love movement, what's your role in how we show up for ourselves, and how are we contributing to the prosperity of mankind through empathy and love. And I think that's going to be the turnkey for a lot of the work that we're doing as social activists, as creative individuals, as parents, as, you know what I'm saying, first generation, second generation, whatever you call yourself. It's going to be really important. And just redefining labels. You know, we're so
Right.
attached to like the labels of who we are and our identities. And this is an opportunity, a very divine opportunity for us to take a really introspective look at how we define ourselves and why we
Mm.
define ourselves in those ways, and the opportunity to say maybe this time for a shift, you know, in order to get everyone to a place of better understanding and empathy, and not just ourselves.
I agree 1000%. It's a
Mhm.
divine shift that's going on right now.
For
So
sure.
thank you. Thank you so much for your time, for your energy, for your presence. I honor you and I value your contribution to civilization.